Thank you so much for tuning into this month's episode, and I'm really excited to share the project that took me the entire month to create. Usually I'm a little bit more dressed up, but I wanted to sport my black hat sweatshirt that's already covered in a lot of fur to help introduce you to our new family member, which just happens to be a black cat named Grimm. But I wanted to create something this month to really show just how happy I was and show him how happy I was that he is now part of our family. I used a lot of cardboard actually from Christmas. We ordered a lot online due to COVID, so I kept everything from like really thin chipboard cardboard that was like really flexible to even double-sided cardboard that's really difficult to cut through. The construction of this took a little bit longer than I had anticipated, and it's pretty intricate. There was one day where I cut the same shape out of cardboard for 19 hours, and I was really thankful for Crime Podcast because I think that's what got me throughout the day. I'm going to introduce you to Grimm, and then we will get right into the project. This is Grimm. This is our new addition to our family, and we are so excited to have him join us. He loves the dogs. The dogs tolerate him, huh? We don't really know the history on him because we think he was a stray. There was evidence of fleas, there were some broken teeth, and he has some scar tissue on his one eyeball. So he can't see. He's actually blind out of his right eye. But he does well. He's still very playful, as you can see. Very curious, and we're so excited to have him a part of the family. I think that's it. I start to ramble towards the end here, so we'll just get into the video, and I truly hope you enjoy. As you could see, my crystal ball told me I needed to build a house for Grimm, so I got started immediately. I ran out to our local hardware store to pick up some wood that I could use as a base to build from. I also picked up some charcoal chalked paint to use for the majority of painting on this project. Since we had ordered our Christmas gifts online this year, we had a lot of cardboard boxes left over. I picked one that would fit nicely on my wooden base, and I peeled off any of the extra tape. I liked the width of the box, but I needed it to be a bit taller, so I cut the corners from a cereal box and glued them onto the flaps of the box to give me my desired height, as you can see here. Once I had finished all four corners, I used a rechargeable cutting tool that my husband had to cut down the bottom flaps of the box. I left about 2 inches of the flaps so that these could be stapled to the wooden base. And then I also cut out what will be our door for Grimm. I wanted to add some stability to the box in case Grimm would lean against one of the walls once he was inside, so I took some pretty thick corners from other boxes and glued them to the inside. Next, I painted the inside of the box with my chalked paint, and as you could see, I had a few supervisors to make sure I wasn't going to mess anything up. Now it's time to staple the box to my wooden base. So now that that section is complete, I just want to give you an idea of what is in my head for the next steps. I drew a little sketch for you. I'm going to be building the front of the house separately and then attaching it to the rest of the house using a heavy-duty glue gun. I'm doing this for several reasons, but mostly because I intend to install some lighting, and it just makes it easier to construct in my opinion. And here is my original idea that I had actually sketched out. Sketches don't have to be perfect. but it's nice to have them just to kind of give you a direction and an idea of where you would like to go with a project. I carefully measured and sketched out where I wanted the windows to be and then used a razor to cut them out. And this was a good stopping point for the night. So this day would be the day that I would install the wallpaper. I wanted it to look like there were actual rooms when you looked into the windows, so I picked out some craft paper that I thought would look best and used Mod Podge to glue that into place. I then used an additional thin layer over top to seal it. I also wanted to install walls so that when you looked into the window, you wouldn't see the next room over. I cut a few pieces of cardboard and installed wallpaper on them as well. And here, you can really tell that the rooms are coming along. I purchased some small 4x6 acrylic sheets online and then cut them down into smaller sizes using a razor. These would be used for the windows. I flipped over the front piece of the house and used a bit of glue to adhere the acrylic into place. Since this is going to be a haunted house, we needed to add some spooky elements. I used black and white acrylic paint to add a little ghost friend in the window. Next, I took some old fabric and made some curtains. Don't worry too much about what the inside looks like. The only thing that's going to matter at this point is that it looks good from the outside when you flip the front of the house back over. And I just made sure to glue everything down in place so that nothing would be moving around once the house is all closed up. And I think this is the part of the project where I realized just how much work I was going to be in for. I have a few sets of string fairy lights that I got from Target and wound them through each room and then stapled them into place. Just be careful when stapling the lights. You don't want to actually nick the wire. You want the wire to go in between each staple. I left a strand out of the top as well since I will be using that to light the next portion of the house, and then glued the front closed. And I have to say that this part was extremely satisfying. Now it was time to construct the next portion of the house. I did the exact same thing where I wallpapered with some craft paper and used Mod Podge to seal everything into place. I glued down the last piece of acrylic for the windows and then took the extra portion of the string lights and stapled them into place. And now it was time to close up this section as well. To cover the raw edges of the cardboard, I took some craft sticks that kind of reminded me of flat toothpicks and cut them down to size and then glued them around the inside of the windows. I then took a flexible piece of thin cardboard to do the round window tops. I wanted to add something special to the inside of the front windows, so I decided on a couple of bats. I cut it from some thick black paper and then bent the wings a little bit. Then I added a dab of glue to some fishing wire and hung them from the inside. Now I needed to create a place where I could get to the battery pack. I cut a small square out of the back portion of the house that we just built, and I made sure to measure exactly where that would line up to the section that is on the base already. I then cut another hole in the box that is stapled to the base, and this way I can reach in, open the flap to turn on the lights, and eventually replace the batteries. It's also nice because it won't be in Grimm's space and will be nice and hidden. Here's Grimm testing it out. I was pretty nervous. I don't know what he thought of it. It's time to glue the two sections of the house together. I used my husband's heavy-duty glue gun for this, and it worked really, really well. I think I'm going to be using that glue gun on many other projects in the future. Since I didn't want to see any of the seams where I glued the two sections of the house together, and to add some more support, I ended up cutting some solid pieces of cardboard to glue to each side, and this really helped to bring the house together. I cut a larger piece of cardboard for the roof and made two little slits in the front so it would just slide into place. I also measured and cut 4 pieces of cardboard for the roof. I angled the corners so they would fit together and give the roof a nice little slant. Now I would be making the next part of the roof. I took some cardboard and measured and cut a window while following the same process that I did before. I also placed a piece of fabric over the window to act as a curtain. I glued the roof together and placed one last piece of cardboard on the top to finish out our basic structure of the house. The next part was to add an awning and a porch. I glued them all into place, and I really have to say it was just a lot of measuring and cutting and sometimes even redoing certain parts of this. And the nice thing is it's cardboard, so if you mess up, you can always cut out another piece, which I did a few times actually. And now to start the most time-consuming part of the project, which were the shingles. I thought of several ways to put these on, but the way that it was going to look the best was to actually add them individually, one by one. So that's what I did. I spent about 19 hours on a Saturday cutting the shingles and gluing them into place. And like I said before, thank goodness for crime podcasts, because I truly think that's what got me through an entire day of putting shingles on this cardboard house. I then took a very thin piece of cardboard, almost like chipboard, to frame the windows, and I literally held up this chipboard and used a pen to really draw marks on that chipboard to where I wanted to cut, and that's how I basically measured everything, and it worked out pretty well, and then just glued everything into place. And just like I framed the windows, I did the same thing for Grimm's doorway. I really do love working with a glue gun. It can get pretty hot, especially when you have it on for a good amount of time like I do, and I've burned myself I can't even count how many times. But it is the nicest to work with because I think it's very durable and you can move along with your project without having to wait for anything to cure. And that, I think, is one of the best benefits about a hot glue gun. Just like the shingles, I also had to do the siding. I did want more of a brick look, but this section was much easier as I was able to use the paper slicer to cut the cardboard. I also used the paper slicer to cut the boards for the porch as well. Now to work on the front door. I took 2 small pieces of my acrylic and painted a layer of Mod Podge on there and then laid down a piece of newspaper on top. This will give our front entrance some mystery and make you wonder why it's all covered. I then framed the window on the door and glued another piece of acrylic there as well. Next, I laid out all 3 pieces of my door and started to frame it together. I found the perfect doorknob and a stash of wooden beads that I had. I then glued the completed door to the front of the house and built a small step in front of it. I then covered the raw cardboard edges with some of the flat wooden craft sticks. I then constructed some stairs off of the front porch and finished the siding around the door. Now comes the fun part, putting all the finishes on the corners of the house, covering the roof the one last time, and just adding the final touches. These pieces of cardboard are going to be covering any gaps, raw edges, and it just gives a really nice, clean finished look to the house. I also added some boards around the side of the porch. And please excuse my pajamas. I did many late nights with this project. So now we're at the part where we can start to add the paint. And I felt like it really took forever to get to this part of the project. There was so much constructing to this. I had this idea, as you could see with the sketch towards the beginning of the video that I had created. I had the idea in my head, and I always kind of have the process in my head as well. And I like to problem solve when the problems arise, not really kind of worry about it beforehand, but tackle it when I get to that portion. And I didn't realize how many things I was going to kind of have to work around, which I love those kind of challenges, but it definitely added a lot more time than I had anticipated. So I really did feel like it took forever to get to the painting portion, but this is so exciting because you get to add a lot of character to the house when finalizing it like this. And you get to decide if it's going to be a happy looking house, a darker looking house, like a haunted house. The paint does so much, and I really couldn't wait to get this started. So let me bring you into this portion of the video. I also created a little extra clay project at the end and threw together something comfortable for Grimm to sleep on when he actually enters the house to hang out or have some space from the dogs. So I hope you enjoy. We'll get started on this next section. I have to admit that I was actually very anxious about painting the house, but I gathered my supplies and put on some good music and got to work. I used my chalk paint and charcoal for the sides of the house. And then I switched to acrylic paint in black for the roof and the front door. I also used acrylic paint in platinum for the stairs and the doorknob, and then I used white pretty much for anything else. Make sure you take your time when painting, but don't get upset if you make any mistakes. The nice thing about paint is you can always go back to your previous color and cover up any mess ups that you might have made. I also used a dry, thicker bristled brush for adding some streaks on the bricks of the house and on the porch. You want to try to give it as much personality as possible and not really paint everything a flat color. I painted a railing to go around the porch, and while that dried, I added some weathering to the stairs. I then measured and glued the railing into place. Next, I took 2 old dowel rods that I had and cut them to length. I painted them white and then glued them into place as an awning support. An important detail to add was the house number, my favorite number. I wanted to add some details to the front of the house, so I got out my polymer clay and started to make foil-shaped pumpkins. I then covered the foil with about 1/4 inch thickness of white polymer clay. I didn't have orange, so I'll just paint them when they're baked. Then I used some green clay to make some stems and vines. I also used some of my sculpting tools to draw some lines down the side of the pumpkins to make them look a little more realistic. I baked them according to the polymer clay instructions and then mixed some orange paint. Once the pumpkins were dry, I got out my jar of moss and started to decorate the front of the house. I really think the pumpkins and the moss were the perfect final touches for this house. The last thing I wanted to do was throw something together for Grimm to lay on inside of the house. I decided to make a quick pillow out of an old sweater that I no longer wear. I cut the amount of fabric that was needed, sewed around the edges, stuffed it, and then hand sewed it shut. I took some buttons that I purchased at my local craft store and sewed one on each side just to give the pillow a little something extra. I use fishing line because I feel that when I pull the buttons together to give it that indented look, that the fishing line actually holds the best. These buttons are called upholstery buttons, and you can find them at any craft store. And that's about it. We are done with our project, and I really can't wait to show you the reveal. Are you guys ready? I honestly didn't know if I'd get this done in time, but thank you so much for taking the time to watch this month's episode. I hope you truly enjoyed it, and maybe it will inspire you to do some cardboard crafts of your own, and I will see you all next month. Thank you again.